Right, hello and welcome back to the How to Crochet a Mini Phone Case or Miniature Pocket, Extra Pocket. This is what we're making. I couldn't find it in the first video. It turns out I was sitting on it. So here it is. This is what we're making. It's a simple little pouch that has a belt loop on the back, so you can wear it either outside your clothing on a belt, or you can pin it inside your clothing if you're wearing an outfit like a skirt or dress slacks to go to a party or something, something fancy. You don't want to carry a purse or ruin the lines of your clothing, so you'll just take a safety pin, or you could even stitch this. Just take a needle and thread and stitch it unobtrusively into the waistband of your clothing and have a pocket that is attached to you so it can't be stolen and it can't be set down and left anywhere, which I am prone to doing. So that's why I mention it. But you can put credit cards, your cell phone, even you could make this to fit a wallet. The size really isn't important. You can make it to fit anything. In my first video, I showed you how to make the beginning chain and the turning chain so that we get started on making the back and forth rows. So let's get started now with the next part. So this is the beginning chain and the first row of single crochet. Now if you've done the first row, it should look like this, and you will have 15 single crochets on your item. And that is where we're going to begin. One thing I did not mention in the first video, that chain that you learned to do right at the beginning with your hands, you can use that for everything. I've used it to roll up extension cords. If you have animals, you're most likely have lead ropes or leashes. You can use it to shorten those. You can use it to do all kinds of things. So you now have 15 single crochet across, and you'll simply count. Right here along the top, you can see each loop has two sides and it loops around the next stitch. And you're going to count each loop to count back how many you have on your row. You want to count them every now and then just to make sure you haven't skipped a stitch or added a stitch, because that will ruin the shape of your finished product. Now, here's what we do with this long tail that we don't really need anymore. It's only there just to hold on to for the very beginning. So we'll flip that up over the top of the working yarn. And again, I'm holding it in my pinky finger for tension, and then over the other two. And then the working yarn goes over the top of my first finger. Now I'm going to yarn over and chain one, and that is my turning chain, because now the entire piece gets turned around and we single crochet. Skip that turning chain. You can see it right there. That's your turning chain, that very first pair of loops that your working yarn is coming out of. You don't want to use that one because it won't get you anywhere. You'll go into the first single crochet. You want to make sure you catch both of the loops of that single crochet. If you only catch one, you leave the other loop loose and it can snag and cause you other problems in the finished product. You can also use that to make a pattern if you'd like to, but that requires counting and making sure that you have the loose stitch where you want it on your project. And because we are turning it around, it's going, if you wanted to make a pattern, you'd have to keep track of which side you're on, which stitch you need to pick up. So it's, for very beginners, it's just easiest to make sure you have both of them and yarn over, pull a loop through. You now have two loops on your hook, yarn over and pull it through those two loops. Now what I'm going to do is make sure that tail is across my work so that I can catch it with the next stitch. And you just make sure your tail is over the top of your hook and through both of those loops again on the previous row, yarn over. Now I've kind of turned it around here. My hook, when it goes through my work, is actually behind the working yarn on my fingers, so that instead of going this away like I was doing for the chain, now I'm coming back to me to grab the yarn. Whichever way is comfortable for you, it doesn't make any difference as long as you can pull a loop through the previous row's stitch. It's no big deal. It can be done any direction you are comfortable doing it. It doesn't make any difference as long as you have a loop come up through the previous loop or through the previous row. Okay. I also did not mention how I hold my hook. There's a couple of things I didn't mention. If you have to take your hook out, make sure your working loop is big enough that it's not going to just slide out, because this does come apart pretty easily. You can just take those out real simply. So whenever you want to set your work down for any reason, make sure that first loop or your working loop is big enough that it's not going to just pull out. Now, what I originally started with that was I hold my hook at the wide part of the hook with my thumb and my first finger, and my other 3 fingers are behind the hook. It's typically braced on my pinky finger. I have really big hands. This may not work for everyone. If you have small hands, you can put it in between your last 2 fingers, your pinky and your ring, just to keep a little bit of pressure on your thumb, so that if you do have to move your first finger for any reason, you still have a hold of the hook. You aren't going to drop it and lose your work. So back to working here. All right, and we're going to catch that tail. This is why I pulled it all the way back to the beginning and took out those first 2 stitches. If you've done your turning chain, you'll go under the tail and through both loops and pull up a stitch. Okay, so you have 2 loops on your hook, and just hold everything together with your thumb and your first finger and yarn over and pull through both loops. You've now turned and you are on row 2 of your project. You're going to continue, again, making sure that you're going in each loop across, in each stitch from the previous row. You don't want to double your stitches and you don't want to skip a stitch. It just will change the shape of your project and make it, instead of being a nice rectangular shape, it will end up being either a triangle because you're taking stitches out, so your sides are going to come in, or it'll end up inverted and you'll end up with polyhedron, and you'll have one little tiny side and one great big long side if you're doubling your stitches. So to keep everything just nice and even, and don't worry if you have some misshaping, because if you don't have your yarn tension, maybe you got a loose stitch, that's not really a huge deal. You can fix that with what's called blocking as you go. That's why you'll see me get a hold of it and kind of pull on it a little bit. That just straightens everything out and makes sure it's all even and nicely tensioned. And you'll see I roll my hook down as I go through the loop, and then I turn it up and hook and back down to come through. That prevents me from hooking the stitch as I try to come back through. If the hook is turned down, it won't hook as easily. So we'll continue to the end of this row, and this hides that ugly tail there pretty easily and makes it real simple to finish your work off nicely without having to really stitch anything if you don't want to. So you'll get that in there. There we go. Now I still have a little tiny bit of a fluffy tail there. Again, not really a big deal. You can cut that off at this point. It's not going to make any difference. Single or slip stitch or chain stitch, either term, they both mean the same thing. You just take your working loop, pull that back out, your working loop, and yarn over and through the working loop. And there you go. Now you turn the whole thing around again, and same process as before. You skip your turning chain, go to the first single crochet in the row, and pull a loop up and single crochet. Okay, and you will continue doing this back and forth until your piece is twice the length of whatever you want it to fit. If you're fitting a cell phone, you would lay it on top of the cell phone and it would need to cover the entire cell phone. And then you want to do that again. You want it doubled so that when you fold it over, see, this pouch is actually folded in the center. It's was made in one long rectangle and then folded double, and then I single crocheted the edge on both sides. This one, for the belt pouch, I actually added another 2 inches to the length of my item and folded that 2 inches down. And this is a simple whip stitch. I will show you how to finish this in the next video. So that's all for now. Thank you for watching. You will simply continue doing what you've been doing. Just single crochet each stitch across your rows, and your slip stitch or your turning chain on the end, and then just keep going back and forth until it's twice the length of whatever your item is. If it's credit cards, if it's a cell phone, if it's a wallet, you just want to make sure that it's long enough to cover or go all the way around your item. So it would have to go all the way up and then all the way back down the back side of it. So you need to have a double length. All right. Enjoy your day. Thank you for watching. Give me a thumbs up and a subscribe if you haven't already, so you can catch video number 3 and be able to finish your Pin-A-Pocket.